Chapter 8. She had assumed that they would be taking the space lift, but Bill set off the opposite way. They walked through the sub-ocean tunnels until they came to an airlock. Bill thumbed the keypad and scanned a token. The inner door ground open and they stepped in. The door closed behind them, and after a bit of clicking and whirring, her ears popped, and then the other door opened. They stepped into a rather small, cramped space with 3 seats and a control panel. "Is this your ship?" she asked with clear disappointment in her voice. He looked at her and laughed. "No, this is just the lander. That will get us into orbit. Well, there we will dock with my ship." He pointed to one of the seats and himself sat in the one with the controls. "I thought we were going to use the lift," she said, as she figured out how to buckle herself in. "That takes too long. In this, we are in orbit in only a few hours. It might get a bit bumpy, but that will pass once we leave the atmosphere." He flicked some switches and twisted some knobs, and then said, "Ready?" "Ready," she replied, and gripped the seat tightly. He pushed the button, and everything began to shake. She felt herself pressed down into the seat as the lander began to rise. Bumpy was an understatement. She felt as if her organs were bouncing around in her chest, and she could not control the position of her arms and legs. But it did not last long. Soon the vibrations calmed down, and she felt herself grow lighter. Mere moments later, they were nearing his ship, and he guided the lander into an open bay that swallowed them up, and the bay door began to close. The ship was larger than she had expected. It was an old build with well-worn edges and patchwork patterns that marked how it had had many owners through the decades, who had all contributed to the vibe inside. Different ways of masking the proximity to the deadly cold vacuum outside. Ships like this were made to last, and had a modular design so that nearly everything could be replaced and changed to suit different needs. It had a large storage area full of all kinds of interesting things. Bill explained that most of it was things he was transporting to sell, but that the rest were things he had collected along his journeys. He would be happy to share the stories of the different mementos therein. He showed her around the ship. She thought it had seemed bigger from the outside. He explained that a bulk of the ship's mass was shielding. You did not want micrometeor ripping through the hull if you could help it. He showed her the radiation shielding, a hollow layer between the shield plates that would fill with various gases and foams, depending on the type of radiation. It was able to block out 97% of all known threats, and if an object did manage to puncture the hull all the way through, the hollow layer would spit out sealant goo in a localized area, stopping the ship from bleeding air until proper repairs could be done. There were redundancies upon redundancies, but still they were at constant risk of being snuffed out. It really brought to light for her how precious the earth really was, how privileged the people who lived there, and how sad it was that they took it all for granted. She had her own room on the ship with tight bunks. The ship could carry a crew of 5, it seemed, but as he tended to go for long voyages, he said that it was easier to travel solo. It put less strain on the systems and his nerves. They remained in near orbit for a day while he was checking the ship's systems. She followed him around, fascinated, trying to learn everything she could. He would go silent when concentrating on something. Then, once satisfied, he would launch into a lecture on whichever systems he was working on. She learned that moving people from A to B in space is not so difficult. Propulsion and maneuvering was just simple rocket science, after all. Knowing basic Newtonian math and orbital mechanics was enough to get the ship where he wanted it to go. The real challenge was keeping the crew alive. Running food and waste systems as sustainably and efficiently as possible required constant attention and management. Every ship has its own ecosystem of plants and bacteria and fungi, as well as some animals on the larger ones. Each ship has a unique ecosystem, many of which have been evolving for a few centuries. He told her, clearly enjoying the chance to share some of his knowledge, and she drank it in, asking a stream of questions and taking notes. They didn't fly straight to the moon. If they had, the journey would have taken 2 or 3 days. Bill explained that the ship was capable of sustained acceleration up to 1.8 Gs. More in an emergency, but running it that hard for long could put stress on the biological systems. Under normal circumstances, they never exceeded 1.2 Gs. During coasting phases, modular components extended outwards and spun to generate artificial gravity. Before heading to the moon, Bill had deliveries to make, various habitats and stations in near-Earth orbit. She did not mind the detour. Every extra stop gave her time to learn, and she took in everything Bill was willing to teach her. "You pick up things fast," he said. "If we had a little more time, I'd teach you how to fly this thing properly." She liked the idea. With her experience managing the city's gardens and closed-loop systems, a lot of the ship's life supports mechanics already made sense to her. A ship was just another kind of ecosystem, one that moved through space instead of staying rooted in one place. For the first time in a while, she thought about home, how the fires from the failed uprising would have made already difficult lives near impossible. The food production systems would be under a lot of strain. She imagined Simon working day and night to repair and keep them going. She would learn everything she could along the way, so that when she returned, she could help fix everything. During one of Bill's deliveries, while he was off the ship, she took out the package Nixie's had given her. Inside turned out to be a small black lump of matter that was similar to that which the tablet was made out of. She had the tablet out, but could not figure out what to do with it, or how this lump would help Elise. She tried touching the lump to the back of the tablet, and was startled as the lump just sunk into it, as if with no resistance, and it was gone. She turned the tablet over, half expecting the lump to have fallen out the other side. It had not. Instead of the lump, the screen had a message. Library updated, Chi at 0.003%. The smiley winked at her, and then the screen showed the menu again. She opened the library menu and found a new inventory from Nixie's containing texts that were from after the Spacer Wars. More history for her to learn about. A few days later, the cargo hold was almost empty, with the remainder destined for the moon, so the course was set. She read about the history of Lunar. It had been intended as the 7th city, a place where people could adjust to life away from Earth's comfortable abundance of air, water, and gravity, and from there expand away towards the outer inner planets as well as out beyond the asteroid belt. Then, as resistance grew, leading to and during the Spacer War, the moon became a kind of prison, where the 500 would send the most determined, unyielding troublemakers who threatened to undermine peace and progress. The colony on the Earth's moon came to be known as Lunar, the storehouse for the lunaticians, all of whom were dependent on the spacers they despised for providing resources to keep the city breathing and fed. That did take the fight out of most of them, yet even so there were some who remained die-hard resistors to the evil spacers. The 500 applied social engineering to dampen the rebelliousness. They used every trick in the book to placiate the wild bunch that had been accrued there. Not willing to simply let them die, risking losing their own humanity, they poured vast resources into building facilities for entertainment and recreation that could fulfill every pleasure imaginable, encouraging the lunar population to put all its time and attention into fulfilling their base needs and competing with each other in mostly non-violent ways, which then became entertainment for the rest of the moon, who bet on everything and anything. Luna evolved into one big entertainment and party moon, a place where competition was a way of life. It was separated into sectors, with flexible borders that each got a different gang. That was all it took to get the inhabitants to form into teams and begin to compete, with little battles breaking out now and then, but most disagreements were turned into a showdown competition of some sort. Our best at something against their best. Stakes on the table, and the winner takes all. There were examples of territorial disputes being resolved through dance-offs, board games, rap battles, all manner of athletic sports, and even calligraphy. Whatever was likely to pull a big gambling crowd and fuel the betting pool, on top of any territory on the line. It was ingenious, really. During an evening of conversation, she learned that Bill had made his fortune on Luna, fighting for different factions and becoming the decisive factor in more than a few skirmishes. His victories hadn't just earned him fame, they had won him his ship and his first trade routes. From there, he carved out a piece of the action in Earth's orbit, building his empire one deal at a time. "So you're a kind of pirate?" she teased, flashing a grin. She had read about the privateers who once roamed Earth's oceans when the seas were still wild and full of life. Bill chuckled, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I'm as much a pirate as you are a princess," he shot back. "Beth told me a little bit about you. Sounds like your mom's the queen of your city, which makes you royalty." Her smile soured. "I was more like a pet to that woman," she said coldly. "Something to parade around when I was new and interesting. And then when the novelty wore off, I was left to rot in my room." Bill's expression didn't soften. Not with pity, anyway. And that suited her just fine. She didn't need sympathy. If anything, his indifference sharpened her resolve. She felt how far she had come from the girl she used to be, the one trapped, forgotten, waiting for something to change. She wasn't waiting anymore. A flicker of confidence sparked inside her. She would reach oldest, and when she did, it wouldn't be as anyone's pet or princess. It would be on her own terms. The ship parked in lunar orbit, and they went down to the ladder bay. The ride down in the little lander was short and smooth. Once they landed and the door opened, Bill told her she could leave her stuff in the lander for now. They would come back later once they knew where they were going, to stay and how long they were likely to have to wait until she could get on her way to the next leg of their journey. If someone asks you a favor, begs for credit, or tries to sell you something, just shake your head firmly and tell them, no. Some people can be very persistent if they think there's the slightest chance of opportunity, and generosity here is seen as a sign that you have got money to lose, making your mark. So until you get a feel for the place and the people, try to keep to yourself and keep your eyes open." She nodded that she had heard him, and thought to herself that he made it sound as if the moon was a worse place than her old city. Her social one-upmanship upbringing had taught her how to read people's intentions. So far it had guided her well, showing her who was kind to her because they wanted something from her, and who was just a kind heart like Cy and Beth. The walkways were full of people, going every which way. Many of them did indeed try to catch her attention, holding out some stuff in hope of getting a sale, or an empty hand in hopes of charity. She shook her head and focused on following Bill, who danced through the crowd at a strong stride, the crowd flowing around him as if some unspoken communication was going on, and that she was unaware of. She bumped into every other person, it felt like, as she tried to keep up with Bill. There were stores and varied services lining the walkways, and many corridors flowing out from them, with even more shops and workshops. This was truly a busy area, she thought to herself, feeling slightly dizzy by it all. There did not seem to be clear organization to anything, but it just seemed to work. If there was a need that was common enough, someone would put up a stall to meet that demand. It was kind of beautiful in a way. It made her think about something she had been reading about, anti-fragility of nature. How biological diversity allowed ecology to be fragile and yet robust at the same time. But here on Luna there was no nature, only biology that was here to serve humanity, clean air and provide food. Most of it was synthetic, or so heavily modified that it did not resemble anything on Earth. The lunaticians were also different. Most were quite tall and thin, not as much as the spacers who stayed away from the gravity wells. She stood out with her bulky Earth-derived muscles and figure. People seemed to notice her, but unless they thought they could perchance sell her something, they did not give her a second glance. Not one she noticed, anyway. After many turns and a few stares, they came to the first destination, a trader who Bill had regular business with. The trader had a small shop with barely enough space for more than 3 people to stand in at once. The walls were covered in what she guessed were pictures of past customers with quotes beside them. Reading a few, she saw that they were mostly testimonials to what a great guy Bishal was as a business partner. Bishal seemed friendly enough as he and Bill went over some business and then turned to her matter. Getting out of Earth territory is tricky these days. No one I know has been to Mars since forever. I'm not saying it can't be done, only that it might take time. If it can be done, I am the guy to figure it out, said Bishal with his best friendly smile impersonation. In the meantime, if you need a place to stay, I can point you to somewhere cleanish, cheap and fair. The owner is an old business friend of mine, Bishal said, and pointed to a guy with black mangy hair and a crooked smile that gave her the sense that he was not the brightest block in the wall. They thanked Bishal and went to find their accommodation for the night. They found it after a bit of wandering around the Lunar tunnels. It was as advertised. Not bad, not good, but it would do. The owner was friendly and happy to hear that Bishal had sent them to him. Great guy, that Bishal, he said, parroting the quote from his picture. With that settled, they decided to check out the surrounding area. I haven't been here in over 20 years, Bill said. Everything is different, but same at the same time. As if it's all new but built out of the same stuff. But he seemed lost in remembrance. She was feeling pleased at herself for how well she was now maneuvering through the crowd. Barely anyone tried following her anymore, until a wrinkled woman caught her attention. You are looking for a way out of this place, yes, the woman said, and went on. You have a long journey ahead of you, full of danger and challenges. But you were overcome and come out as a better, more powerful version of yourself. The wrinkled woman told her some more personal things about her, and then offered to give her a reading. I have privileged access to the moon's greatest supercomputer. It can predict your future with more accuracy than any other in the universe. She was intrigued. How could this strange woman know all these things without some advantage? This might be worth exploring. But then the woman's mysterious demeanor faded, and annoyed irritation replaced it, as Bill stepped in laughing. Out of everything going on, you get caught by a fortune teller? He pulled her after him, leaving the wrinkled woman, cursing him for stealing her promising mark. But she knew things about me, about my past. Maybe she knew something useful, she said, feeling slightly defensive over the situation. She did not mention that she thought this woman might have had a way to talk with a lunar colony, PBAI. Seemed unlikely, though. That was just called reading. An age-old way of reading appearance and guessing some facts in between. But the real trouble would have come later. After she had fished out some more personal information on you, she would have sold it to someone, setting you up for an even bigger shark to come in for a bite. He was clearly not judging her. Relax. Nearly everyone gets hustled in Luna at some point. It's part of its charm. That's why I'm here, to guide you through this hungry place. He gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, and continued on through the crowd of people going every which way. They went into a funny-looking bar that was covered in neon signs depicting aliens of various sorts. Sign in the front declared its name as the Armstrong. The bartender was a robot of a sort that she had never seen before, with 6 arms that were constantly on the move, grabbing and pouring and mixing drinks. What will you have, fellow astronauts? Came a voice, not from the robot, but from a speaker in the table that was shaped like a bulky helmet. That was shaped like a bulky space helmet. Bill ordered himself his usual cocktail. She thought to copy his order, but decided to have some fun and put the robot to the test. What is the most complicated cocktail you can make? She asked. But that would be the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster, replied the voice. I will have that, she said, and noticed that Bill was giving her an amused look. Been nice knowing ya, he said, and took his cocktail from the robot, who then turned to her drink. It used all its arms to make it, tiny drink containers, flying around and then mixing together, becoming a colorful mix of colorful liquids that swirled around each other. She took the drink and walked over to where Bill was already sitting down at a table and eyeing some lovely ladies over at another table. He looked at her as she sat down and said, That thing is a sure ticket to a crazy night. And He held up his cocktail and said, "Too crazy, too crazy," she echoed and gulped at her drink. The rest of that night was mostly a blur with brief moments of total lucidity. She remembered feeling odd right after gulping her drink, as if her brain had left her body. This caused her to panic, which lasted a few seconds, and then she started laughing hysterically, stating, "If I have no brain, then how can I feel pain?" Bill realized then that this was going to turn into one of those nights, so he ordered 3 more cocktails for himself. When he returned to the table with his drinks, the girls he had been eyeing had moved over and were laughing with her, or at her, he wasn't sure, but he was very pleased by how this was going. The 4 of them partied together into the lunar night. Morning after, she felt as if her brain had been smashed out with a lemon. When Bill knocked on her door, she almost told him to go away, but said, "Come in," instead. He looked as if he had been up for a while. "You sweet girl know how to party. Last night was really fun. You were hilarious." He was looking at her differently somehow. What had changed? She had gotten wasted with him before on Earth. Had last night been any different? "The way you took down those guys, it was devastating to see how they crumbled before you," he went on with admiration and his signature chuckle. "I don't remember that," she said through the headache and fumbled for something non-alcoholic to drink. He painted the scene, how he had left the girls to go buy some food for them. On his way back, when he had seen these 3 guys being obnoxious to one of the girls that was with them. "I was going to intervene, but you beat me to it. You were vicious," he told her, grinning. She had belittled them, sharp, theatrical, and devastating. Almost everyone in the bar had started paying attention. "One of the guys attempted to cut back at you, but you threw it right back at him with such artistry that the whole bar exploded laughing and cheering. After that, the guys had sensibly faded back and disappeared. Our tabs were covered for the whole night, and everyone wanted to buy you a drink. It was glorious." Then his demeanor shifted. "Of course, there might be consequences. This territory is in conflict at the moment. The guys you humiliated represent one of the competing sides, so you may have just picked a fight without realizing it." She was having difficulty following, but realized that she might have just made a serious mistake. Maybe drinking wasn't such a good idea. Okay, I need breakfast and a shower and a moment to meditate," she said, planning to have a nap. "You do that. Meanwhile, I'll go and fish for some useful information. See you at lunchtime." And he left her room, leaving her to follow her stated plan. Food and the rest helped, but she still felt like shit when he woke her a few hours later. "Get ready. I have some important people who want to meet you." The people he was referring to were representatives of the rival faction to the one that the 3 guys she had humiliated the night before. "Word spreads fast here," Bill told her. "Every edge could mean a shift in one's favor, so I'm not surprised they found you so quickly. Be cautious. Right now, they see you as an asset against their main rival. Undoubtedly, someone has come up with a scheme on how they can use you to help win this week's skirmish. They might well be your ticket out of here if you play your cards right." Bill and her were led to a nice-looking meeting room with large oak table, surrounded by wooden chairs. Around the walls there were gold decorations. The table was more valuable than the gold. Getting fine wood like that on Lunar would have cost the average worker a century of wages. This setup was meant to impress. She was not impressed. Extravagant displays of wealth reminded her of our old city and the people she despised. But these people might be able to help her get out of Earth orbit. So she would hear them out and play along for now. They did not have to wait long before they came. A heavy-set man and a thin, tall one, both in some kind of suits, along with some guards who took positions around the two. Once everyone was seated, the thin one began, "I expect you know who we are." Her perplexed look showed him that she did not, but Bill was nodding and said, "She doesn't get out that much." "Well, suffice to say that we run this slice of the moon, and have done for a long time now. But the people who run those boys you ran into are moving into our territory. We have tried negotiations, but they are greedy and stupid, intending to take what we have without proper compensation or respect." "What have I gotten myself into?" she thought to herself. These guys sound like the people around her mother, insecure and overcompensating. He went on. "The incident at the bar last night is being spoken of up and down the layers, about how a young girl made fools of their muscle." He paused a moment to have a sip. The heavy-set man leaned in. "We want to offer you a role in the duel event that's to be held in 2 days. You and your bodyguard," nodding at Bill. She did not correct him, and Bill smirked, content with the title. "What do you want from us?" Bill asked, taking his hat off and fixing his greasy black locks. "We understand you are a man of considerable talents, and clearly she is sharp as a well-tended blade. We would ask that you join our side in the imminent tussle," said the thin, tall man. The smaller, bulky man jumped in. "We have been insulted beyond the point of forgiveness. After having bent sideways to accommodate them, and allowing them their space to get an honest start, their greed has blinded them and made them arrogant. This cannot stand." He was clearly very agitated, going red in the face as he spoke. The thin one was more composed as he went on. "We would of course reward you with any service within our abilities for siding with us. Having someone like you, a royalty from Earth, would clearly aid our claim. Name your price." That made her jaw drop. Royalty? Her? Here? She glanced at Bill, who could not hide his amusement. "Can you provide transport out of Earth orbit?" Bill cut in before she could say anything. The two men looked at each other and seemed to speak non-verbally for a moment, and then, "We might be able to provide you with a transport contract that would get you equipment that can guide you through the minefield to Mars. Every now and then we get a contract to deliver some samples to the science colonies. However, it is increasingly difficult to find a ship and a captain willing and able to take the risk." She had read about the mines that orbited a wide orbit around Earth in one of the updates from Nixies. Yet another hazard in the ever-growing list of ways to die in space. "That might work," Bill continued to lead the conversation, while she slowly tried to keep up. "So exactly what do you need us to do?" "Well," the man started and got up. A declaration of challenge will be issued tomorrow, at which point representatives from either side will sign up stating their challenges. Then representatives of the other side agree to face those challenges. Whichever side has won more challenges by the second day gets the prize, and the loser has to relocate. This sounded actually kind of fun, she thought to herself. All those years alone in her room using virtual trainers to explore random talents might come in useful now. But what was that about royalty? Can we have a moment to confer? She said, getting up and leading Bill away from the nodding men. Once they were alone, she said, "What was that about me being royalty? I thought we needed to keep a low profile." He laughed. "Too late now. You may not remember this, but you made some friends yesterday, and you told them pretty much your life story. You had quite a big audience. I was quite impressed, actually, by how theatrically you captivated their attention. Why didn't you stop me?" she asked, thinking to herself that at least she had not spoken about the tablet. But still, that was another dumb, drunken mistake. That crowd would have chewed me out if I had tried. You were the darling of the masses, the rebel from Earth. The Lunatician Society has strong sentiments against their perceived oppressors from deep spacers. You are now an icon to them." "Shit," was all she could think to say. They went back into their room and continued discussion with the men until everyone seemed content. They agreed to represent them in the games, finding challenges to win some points, and in return, the men would help them on their mission to go to Mars and beyond.